Texas!
He's a 10.
I choose this family.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 128 of 9-1 Lone Star Roundup. I'm one of your hosts, Katie, and with me are my lovely co-hosts, Grace and EJ.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
Today, we'll be talking about Season 5, Episode 8 of 9-1 Lone Star, titled The Quiet Ones. There's so much to talk about, and I love this episode. I think it might be my new favorite.
It's a really good episode.
Oh my goodness.
So we gotta get into
was good.
it. So we start off with this guy cooking, and I'm like, okay, he's cooking eggs at what seems to be night, but we're moving on. Do
Breakfast
you,
for
dude?
dinner. Hey, like, I'm
I
here
love
for it.
it. I love it. And then starts getting these strange calls, and like he hangs up the first one, and then the guy calls back saying how he's changed his number to his like cell phone or something like that. And so this is like weird. And then he says, "Oh, and I think there's something wrong with your dog." And I'm like, "Don't tell me that." And
Yeah, because the dog had been barking and then it just stopped.
yeah, I got suspicious because I was like, "Oh no!" And then it makes the guy be like, "Who the hell is this?" So then he sees on his security cameras that some guys are trying to break in. So he calls 911 and he's on the outskirts. So it's gonna take APD a minute to get there. And Wyatt tells he's telling Wyatt what happened, and so Wyatt finds out he was cooking, so he's like, "Oh, you have a frying pan," so he ends up hitting like a couple of the guys with a frying pan, and he does it, and then he was able to run, but like not far enough because he literally didn't continue to run into like the woods or something because he's just standing by a tree, and one of the guys comes up and stabs him while he's on the phone with Wyatt, which just totally gave me like the flashback of like the scene from season 3 with Carlos, where the swatting call.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that
I
literally.
was just like, dude, why'd you stop running?
I know, because he's
Right?
like, make sure to get far
Have you never seen a
away.
horror movie before?
I know, right?
Sorry.
Yeah,
No
plus he was
horror
on the
movie yet.
landline. Like, your phone's gonna
Oh,
disconnect.
true.
Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I don't know how far, but like sometimes even if you go like across the street, your landline disconnect. Like,
Mm-hmm.
connection's not that far.
Right. Yeah, it's only
Yeah.
50 feet, maybe.
Also,
Yeah.
you press your back up against something instead of having it exposed to anything, and you crouch down and stay really quiet.
Yeah. Well,
Number
he did see two guys coming in and he assumed it was only two guys. He didn't realize there might have been a third.
which is fair enough. I will give him that. Like he didn't know there was going to be a third, but still, I don't know. You have me pinning myself down in exactly one area until the cops come, and that is it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be like
Also,
locking
because like
myself in
I'm
the
sorry,
bathroom or
throwing burning
something.
grease on somebody and knocking them out with a frying pan isn't going to do much.
That's such
Like
a
they're going to come up back. I was like, Rapunzel. This guy's bald, but we'll take it.
Yeah, that's true. And I was just like, are you kidding me?
I felt really bad for the guy.
I
I was
did
like, I have no
Me
idea
too.
what's happening, but I feel really bad for you right now.
I know. I was a little confused, and obviously like it clarifies later like what this whole thing was. But I was so confused. I was like, what was that?
I mean,
Like,
when a murder starts at this point, I'm just like, and that is a Carlos thing at this point.
well,
I'm
yeah, I
waiting,
did.
chopping at the bit for more Carlos stuff, but like,
Right.
yeah, I was definitely confused on why it was relevant. That's for sure. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
why are we killing more people? Like, it makes sense, but why are we killing more people?
Mhm.
Yeah. So then we see TK going to see Enzo in prison, and the scene really made me mad. Um, and he's playing with Jonah, and this is like so sad just seeing a kid like visiting his father in prison. Like, this is not a place for a child.
Mm.
Then Enzo like comes out, and him and TK talk, and TK asks like about what happened, and Enzo was saying how it was basically like a bad investment, and then he started pulling money from his other investments to cover his losses because his employees were going to lose their jobs.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I kind of figured it was that because it ended up being somebody that literally like screwed him over essentially, and then he got obviously got too deep in, and that's never good. Um, and
Yeah.
then
He definitely still made his own choices, but like
yeah,
Right.
it didn't start from a like ill intent.
Right.
right, yeah,
It
Like,
was just he
yeah.
was trying to cover his losses in the end, and that was moving things around like that can definitely there's some problems.
yep. And then
Yeah.
Enzo wants TK to call his business manager to get money for Jonah before the government seizes more of his assets. And he wants him to do this because he wants to put Jonah in a boarding school in Switzerland. I have a
What?
few things to say about
No.
this. First off,
Hmm.
Leland and I leave TK out of this because this is like he could get in trouble for this. Also, don't you think the
Yeah.
government has friggin' seized more of your assets?
Right.
Do you even think that you have assets that can be pulled out? Probably
And
not.
also, like, what do you think they're not gonna realize? Like, they're gonna be able to trace all of that. They're
Yeah.
going to be
Mhm.
able to figure out that you didn't originally have him, you know, ready to go to a boarding school in Switzerland. They're going to figure out that that was done post arrest. They're going to figure out a lot. That's not, Tiki's not a criminal. He's not going to be able to hide his
No.
tracks.
And
But
he's not gonna do that anyways.
I
No.
just realized something. If I'm understanding it correctly, Switzerland, the government can't touch the banks of Switzerland, and he said they were in Swiss francs, which is their money denomination.
Oh,
So
right.
that money can't be
Switzerland. Yeah.
touched.
But even
Okay,
so,
still
I
doing some
don't,
shady
yeah,
deals.
and okay, the fact that he wants to put a 3-year-old, because it was
I am
confirmed
not.
that he was
Three.
3, in a friggin' boarding school in Switzerland, and he tries to make it sound better, saying, "Oh, Sophia, the nanny, she's going to like, don't worry, she'll be there to get him acclimated." Okay, he
To
is
get him
3.
acclimated, that doesn't mean that she's even staying though. Like
He's 3. He's not, it's not like he's like 15. Though,
Right?
like, I feel
and what's
like,
the long-term plan? Like boarding schools like that don't usually carry through for holidays or for winters or summers or stuff like that. Like it's a school. He's not even in preschool yet. Like what's that? I was
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah,
Yep.
was
yeah,
not
I'm
pleased.
definitely
yeah.
not happy with that.
No, I wasn't. Like, I saw that beforehand, and I was like, what the heck?
Like I can admire wanting to take care of your kid,
Hmm.
but like I can respect Enzo was trying to look after the future of Jonah. That's one thing. But not necessarily the way to go about doing
Well,
that.
and I can't believe he wouldn't have talked with TK. Okay, so I understand that TK is his stepson and that Gwen's his
Mm,
mom and that Jonah is 3 years old and TK's a 30-year-old adult. We just had his birthday.
mm.
But given that Gwen is gone, the only other adult in his life that's like biologically related should have at least be mentioned or asked what he feels about
Mm.
that, not just saying, I want you to do this. It's like, did you even think
Yeah.
that there might be another option?
Plus,
Also, there are options because at some point, because Enzo was going to go to prison, that's when the system would have stepped in and taken Jonah. Well, granted, Jonah is also a resident of New York.
Or,
Technically, that is where he lives. So supposedly he would have been going back there, but likely they would have looked to TK anyway
yeah,
because he is the only living
he's next
by,
of
as
kin.
far as we can tell, biological
right.
relay. Yeah, he's next of kin. So they probably would have asked him anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Yep.
obviously we don't want the kids spending any time in the system either. Like, I don't like
Yeah.
again, I get what Enzo was thinking, even if I want to
Mm-hmm.
smack him for it. Like, that's not the way to do it.
No.
But
Yeah,
also
yeah,
don't ask that of TK. Like, come on.
Right.
yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
And
Sophia's so sweet. I'm sorry, we've barely
Yeah.
seen her, but she's so cute
Yeah,
with
I like her.
Jonah.
I really do like her.
Yeah.
And TK makes a good point. I love that he said this because they kind of end this scene with him saying, "But who will be there to hug him?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that
Yeah.
was something that obviously he needed as a child. So obviously he's thinking about this. Or like that like breaks my heart because I'm just like that's the thing. Like
Right.
it's just terrible.
Well, yeah, and I mean it's a tough situation all around, and I know that a lot of kids will go to boarding schools, but you're right, like most of them don't continue through like the summer break, or it doesn't look the same as like what a normal kid would have like a summer break. There's, summer
Yeah.
activities that can maybe be done, but yeah, most kids aren't on campus for like the summer, or at least a few months on summer. So where would he go?
Yeah. I've never
Also,
heard of
like,
it for that young.
Yeah.
also he would have no sense of stability. He'd have no family. It's not like, okay, Enzo, you're putting money into this. Are you thinking about money for travel expenses? Send him back to visit TK, or for TK to go over and visit him? Like, are you thinking that kind of thing? Just because he would be what would essentially look like an orphan in a rich system doesn't make him any different than an orphan in a poor system. He
Right.
would still be alone. He wouldn't have anyone in his corner. He wouldn't have anyone to go to. He would have severe abandonment and neglect issues, even if those people at the boarding school are great. But you never know. Who's he going to go to if they're bad? So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I have many fundamental problems on it, but
Yeah. I do have
fortunately, not looking like the problem.
yeah,
But
I have many thoughts about that, but yeah, but then Owen goes to see Tommy. He brings her food, and Tommy is talking about how the treatment she's getting is experimental, so it's better odds than just 50-50. It's like 98.7% effective, and she's
which
starting
those are
it
pretty nice odds.
tomorrow. Yeah, those are really good odds.
Mhm.
And she's starting it tomorrow, and she's scared, but she's not scared of the things you would think she's scared of. She's scared of throwing up from the chemo, which I actually really understand because, like, I
That's really
have,
valid.
Yeah,
that's like fear.
that was
I think
one of my mom's big ones.
I
Yeah,
think it's like it's that, and also like she said, she's like, I haven't thrown up since I was pregnant with twins. I think it's just kind of like the little like pieces of normalcy slipping away a little bit. And also just throwing up is horrifying. I don't like throwing. Who likes throwing up?
no,
No, no,
nobody
no one
likes
does.
it. Every time I
But
do, I
she's so valid.
cry.
Oh my
I
God,
do.
yes. Also,
Um,
I'm just gonna say, I didn't even realize that I needed this scene, but who better for Tommy to talk to than Owen?
Yep.
I
Like,
loved
Owen's
it.
already beating.
Scene.
I did not realize I needed this. I love this scene
Yeah,
actually
this
I
a
was a great
lot.
know.
scene.
They have such good scenes together. They really
They always
do.
do. They always slap in their scenes together. It's amazing.
Yeah, and
I'm missing it.
yes, for sure. And Owen tells her how, like, every time you get a chemo, you come out a stronger person. And they're talking, then Tommy suddenly gets this call, and it's like, oh, that does not seem good. And when she gets off the phone, she says how apparently AFD's insurance doesn't cover her treatment because it is
Mhm.
experimental. So, Tommy has been switched to the traditional approach, which only has like a 50-50 survival rate.
Didn't Owen have an experimental treatment when he was season one? Wasn't that experimental?
Yes.
I want to say he did.
He did.
And
I am 95% sure on that. It was that's one of the reasons he got connected with Buttercup, if I remember correctly, because I think it had helped with Buttercup in
yeah,
his treatment, and they were
yeah,
still
because
figuring out
Buttercup's
what he
treatment
meant.
was the same because he had the same cancer as Owen.
Yeah,
Still
so
haven't seen Buttercup, just saying.
where the hell is Buttercup?
Like they're
I
purposely not at Owen just so it's like they don't have an excuse to show.
I'm just
yeah.
gonna start bringing
Uh,
that up.
yeah. But
Literally.
so I'm wondering if Owens was covered or not, or if he simply had more funds tucked away to take care of it himself, or how that was qualified. I'm wondering. Obviously, we're not
Well,
going to get an
I
answer on that,
mean,
I doubt. But
I know that, I mean, every couple years, my union redoes their plan on what they want to cover and not with the medical that I get. So it makes sense that maybe when he got there, they did cover it, but then they stopped covering it because it was getting to be too expensive. And then hence the episode we have.
Yeah,
and also, we had the whole thing. It looked like the mayor was rather new and stuff like that. I'm wondering if he came in and switched some shit around about
that's what I was
city funding and
thinking.
stuff. Like I'm wondering if stuff happened with him. Also, like I really enjoyed. I will just say, I know we're going to get to that later, but I really enjoyed getting to watch an episode about politicians getting handed their like
Oh yes, we love.
really enjoyed this. We will get to that later, but I had to mention that. But anyhow, this sucks for Tom.
Yeah.
I know. I feel so bad. And yeah, so that happened. And then Carlos wakes up, we have TK next to him in bed. And I'm like,
Carlos, you look
once
so good this
again,
episode.
I'm like, once again, we couldn't get a wake up scene. Are you kidding me?
I'm
Just
sorry,
like,
but he looked so good this episode. Why'd he look so good this episode?
he
Right.
did.
God.
He did. And so yeah, they finally have the same day off, and Carlos thought they were gonna sleep in. Um, and Carlos asked TK what he's working so hard on, and TK says it's an adoption attorney. And Carlos is kind of like, oh, why would we need an adoption attorney? And TK says how Enzo is going to prison. It sounds like it's going to be for a very long time. And Carlos asks if he asks him to take Jonah. And TK says no, but he wants to send him to some boarding school outside of Geneva. And Carlos is like, oh, wow, okay. And TK says how it is not okay. He doesn't care how fancy the place is. It's not right for him to be raised in some kind of institution, which I agree. And
Yeah.
Carlos tells TK that he doesn't think it's TK's choice, that it's Enzo's. And my thought was, you would think that Gwen would have some type of will agreement stating if something were to happen to her or Enzo, what, like both of them, what would happen? Because I don't think a boarding school was really on her mind. I don't see Gwen wanting that for her
Right.
child.
Yeah,
I
I-
doubt it's like she wasn't even she had no premonition of even her own death. Like her own death was extremely sudden. So I don't know. Like she was smart. She was a lawyer. You'd think that would come into mind, but I imagine she probably thought it was probably just he was left to the care of Enzo.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I would be surprised if it was further elaborated than that.
Yeah. Well, I would hope
Mhm.
and stuff. So I'm just like, this is very interesting. And I can understand sometimes when there is an age gap with kids, the parents don't want the older kids to like have, not that a younger child with that much of a gap is a burden, but sometimes they don't want like the older kids to have to take care of the younger kids if something happens to them.
Yeah, because you do hear a lot, oh, well, I had to, drop out of school early because I had to take care of my little brother or things like that. So I could see like not wanting to ask TK and Carlos. But then I'm like, if TK has the relationship with Enzo that I seems like he does, maybe he's talked to Enzo about Carlos's maybe not wanting to have kids or something. And so then that was maybe why he chose not to ask them. I don't know. But it's an interesting conversation. And I can see Carlos is like, kind of trying to put the pieces together.
I will say like this was as much as I like see what TK's doing and I agree with him, I was a little bit more in Carlos's corner, partially because he did not get consulted about it at all, and TK was planning on going full speed ahead without talking to his husband, especially knowing that Carlos isn't really sure about kids, not sure he wants kids.
Right.
Like I completely understand where TK is coming from. This is not like a condemnation of TK, but this is also me going, hey, I don't think Carlos is at all in the wrong here because he's feeling very blindsided. He hasn't had a chance to react to any of this.
Right.
Mhm.
And I
Also,
don't know,
like, yeah, he is struggling a little bit here.
yeah. And I don't know how far he was going, if he was just looking into it.
Yeah.
Or what he was doing exactly. It's hard to say. He could have just been looking.
I would still, my first move would have been to talk to Carlos, just personally, I think so. But that might have also been he was afraid of the answer, which doesn't make it a good thing, but makes it an understandable thing. Like, I do think he was afraid of what Carlos would say, which, yeah, I get it. I get it. I've avoided conversations because I've been afraid of what the other person's going to say because I know what they're going to say before. Like, been there, done that.
Yeah, and then TK asked, well, what if he did ask us to take him? And Carlos says, well, he didn't. And TK's like, but what if I asked him? And Carlos says how he would hope that TK would talk to him first, which I mean, yes, of course. This is his husband we're talking about. I would hope so.
Yeah.
And
Rather important.
TK like asks Carlos like he would say, and Carlos says how he would say that they'd be out of their depth. And Carlos asks TK if he knows how to care for a toddler or how they would manage watching him when TK is on a 24-hour shift and Carlos is on a case. And TK says they'd figure it out, and Carlos is like, so that's a no. And TK,
Hey, ask Sophia if she wants to relocate to Austin, is all I'm saying. Like, she already
Right?
has an established relationship, but like,
yeah,
sorry, I had to say that. That was my only thought there.
yeah. Can they afford a nanny? That's my thought.
Right.
Probably not.
I don't know how fancy that is, but TK says like, look, people figure like this stuff out. Like Judd is practically raising a 3-year-old on his own, and he is making it work. And Carlos says like how like he has lots of family to help, and TK says so do we, which is true. They have Andrea and Carlos's sisters, I'm sure. And TK and Owen, but like they both work the same shift.
Right.
I think I find it interesting how Carlos doesn't seem to feel like they have family that would help. I think I know this might be me analyzing a little bit deep, but I do feel like this is an extension of him just feeling very alone at the moment. I think he's trying to communicate that to TK. Because ultimately, I think he is feeling pretty alone and like trying to figure out what happened to his dad and also having to manage like prioritizing his marriage on top of it. And I will say it like this, and I think this reaffirms it. They're both having trouble prioritizing their marriage right now because
Yeah.
TK is looking at Jonah, but he wasn't thinking of talking to his husband first. And Carlos has been so wrapped up in, his father's murder and everything going on at work that he's also having trouble. Obviously, they love each other very dearly. This is not an issue with that. They're just having trouble prioritizing each other. So I think that's coming across too.
Yeah. And like
But
Carlos could be looking at it from like a protective
mm,
standpoint because like with Gabriel's murder still out there and like that's stressful as is, like bringing a child into that wouldn't be fair because it would be like, well, I'm devoting so much of my time to figuring this out, and
yeah.
there's that whole thing too.
And also, like, right, throwing this out there, I don't know if he's thinking about this, but Carlos is looking for the murder. What if he becomes the target next? What if that puts Jonah in harm's way? I don't know if he's
Yeah.
thinking that, but I feel like it would be a logical thing to be worried about.
Yeah, for sure. And like PK asked Carlos to like please stop pretending this is all about logistics and tell him what is really bothering him. And Carlos says, ever since we started therapy, I've been working on being more present as a husband. And TK is like, okay. And Carlos says, especially when it comes to managing the stuff with my dad. And TK is like, oh, all right, I get it. And Carlos is like, what do you get? And TK says what this is all about, like swear it feels like there's 3 people in the marriage sometimes. And Carlos goes, oh, you mean you, me, and my dad? And TK says, no, you, me, and your father's killer. And Carlos says how it will be that way until he catches Gabriel's killer. And Carlos says how he's sorry, but he does not have the bandwidth to be a dad right now. And TK says how, but he does, and he is done living his life on pause. Carlos's phone rings, and he kind of, when it rings, before he picks it up, he kind of stares at TK for a second. And then, like, after the call, he tells TK it was work, and TK's like, shocker. And then, like, they kind of have a few glances at each other, and Carlos has to go. And then Carlos is like, sorry. And TK's like, bye. Like, bye. Like, so tense. It is
Yeah.
so tense, like the scene.
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to shake him a little
Right.
bit. Like, this is a treat. Be like,
I can't. I got okay. Here's the thing. I got both sides of it. I understand both,
Yeah.
like where they're both coming from.
Right.
And like it is tough. And I'm like, some people are like, I do not like this. And I'm like, guys, I get it. I don't like them fighting, but I'm also like, this is good stuff too, because it's like good emotional stuff. It's not like some stupid fight about something really stupid. It's actually like serious stuff.
Right.
And I knew the stuff that happened a couple episodes ago. Like, yeah, we got like a couple episodes of them in like a good place. I knew that this stuff was going to come back up again. I knew it
Mhm.
wasn't over after the first time we saw them in therapy.
Mhm.
Like they kind of tried to make us feel like, oh, like we're in a better place, which they are in a sense, but like, yes, this is still very much there, which is obviously what they were trying to remind us of.
I
And
do love that they're following through on the storyline, of course.
Oh,
yeah,
Lot of stuff too. And I think out of the two of them, Carlos was probably handling the conversation the best, but they
right.
both have valid points.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. It's rough.
It is. And I feel like, I think Carlos was initially trying to get to the point of like almost equating finding Gabriel's killer to now TK's stress of Jonah and the Enzo situation. As now this has become like monopolizing TK's life, and now it's impacting their marriage. And I get both sides. I get TK's concern. I get Carlos's concern, and maybe TK was looking up information in hopes to talk to Carlos about things, and it just didn't get there. They were hoping to have a day off together. Maybe that was the whole point, was that they were gonna have some time to talk, and TK could bring it up to him. And I'm glad that they're continuing counseling. I'm glad they sticking with it, because I feel like this is going to help them. But I also know, like we've heard, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it needs to. But I will say that I feel like TK saying he's done living his life on pause was kind of a tough statement, because he's but yeah, so I feel like TK was really, like, he should have been cautious about how he said that, because that could be taken a lot of different ways. When he first told Carlos that he was okay if that was the only child they had in Lu 2, it's fair that TK could change his mind just like anybody else can. But I know that they've discussed that he feels like their first year of marriage has kind of basically been on pause, because Carlos has been so determined and focused on finding Gabriel's killer. So it could have been because of that. It could have been because of the kid situation. But you can't go into starting to look for adoption attorneys and considering taking in your 3-year-old brother without talking to the only other person in the house. Like, you have to talk to them. You can't just be snippy about it. And especially when Carlos, like Katie said, hasn't really had any chance to process any of this, and now he's basically being told, well, my husband now wants to have a kid, and I'm not ready, and I don't want. So it's a tough. It was a good scene, but it was a tough scene.
yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this I'm glad we are tackling this again. Because I knew that I wanted it to come back up when we originally talked about it.
Mhm.
Because I think couples can work through a lot of things and
Mhm.
come compromises on a bunch of different things. Kids is not one of them. And
Right.
so, like, you either want kids or you don't, or you're not sure. Maybe both parties are not sure, maybe one party's not sure. You can really figure that at some point in time. Depends how old you are, really. It works
Right.
out eventually. But one of it just goes down to, if one person wants kids and another person doesn't want kids, it's gonna become a source of contention, most likely.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been like a little wary of this ever since it got brought up, because I'm like, okay, we tabled this. They love each other, they still want to work, like, they still want to be together, they still want to be married, all that. But this is a fundamental difference that they're going to need to figure out at some point.
Yep.
And TK should not need to feel like he needs to abandon his brother, but Carlos also should not need to feel like he needs to be a dad when maybe he doesn't want to be. I don't even think he knows. I don't He does not. He's correct in saying he does not have the bandwidth right now.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Like, I get both sides. I don't know how this is going to ultimately turn out. Obviously, we're going to get more on this later, and we've still got more in the seasons all overall to get. But I'm like, I don't know. I'm really interested to see how this goes, because it
Mhm.
is a really tricky topic to
It is.
navigate
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
sensitivity to both sides. I think they're doing great so far, by the way. I think the show is tackling it pretty well,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's difficult.
I've
Yeah.
had friends that were told that they couldn't have kids, got married to somebody who didn't couldn't, was like, oh yeah, I don't have, not, I can't have kids. And then a couple years in, something happens with their health and they suddenly get pregnant and now they have kids. And
I've
it's like,
Oh
heard
yeah,
that.
heard
so
that for sure.
oopsie, but there again, that was, they got pregnant, not that they chose to adopt. Adoption and surrogacy are definitely more of a choice over an accident. So
Yeah.
this is definitely more of a choice. So yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So then we see Owen go to meet the mayor to work on this healthcare stuff for Tommy, and like he's able to get in because of all the things he's done for the city, obviously. But apparently there isn't money for experimental treatments or something like that for
Yeah.
Tommy, and they can't make an exception for her because then they have to make an exception for everyone.
Right.
But we all know Owen, he will not take no for an answer. So
He
he
will
is
not.
getting a yes one
Yeah.
way or another, which, I do love that about him. I do
Mhm.
love that kind of thing. So it's interesting to see where this goes. So then that we'll get back to that later, but then we go into a briefing with the Rangers. They're talking about Julio being killed, and like this is like they're talking about a gross it's just gross
Mhm.
what happened to him. I'm just gonna say that. Campbell makes a comment about how like damn, after all the nines are gonna skate all that, the nines are gonna skate again. And Carlos is like, what do you mean again? And Carlos asks Chief Bridges, like, what does he mean by that? And Chief Bridges is like, asks for the room. And so Carlos, and he tells Campbell he can stay. So Carlos, Campbell, and the Chief are in this room. And Chief Bridges explains how a year ago they were close to taking the Nines down, and Gabriel had developed a high level source inside the gang, a money launderer who kept all the books. And Carlos asks why he has never heard of this. And Bridges says for a couple reasons. The first being that this operation was sealed and only four people fully read in were Ranger Campbell, Bridges, and Gabriel. And Carlos asks like who the source was. So they tell him it was Nestor Grimes. And Carlos asks where he is, and like we don't know. It felt like he fell off the face of the earth. Campbell says their best guess is they found out he was working with them and took him out. And Carlos finds a picture of him and was like, "Wait, is this him?" And they confirm that it's in fact him. And Carlos asks what Gabriel thought happened. Bridges says how Gabriel never got a chance because he was murdered 2 days prior to Nestor disappearing. And Carlos is kind of like in shock and says like, what? Like, and says how the timing of that didn't strike you as suspicious. And Bridges says, oh, of course it did. But like he told Carlos at the funeral that Gabriel had a lot of enemies and they did check into it and they couldn't find like any concrete evidence that they were behind it. And Campbell adds on saying the Nines wouldn't be crazy enough to kill a ranger. And I'm like, I don't know about that, but okay. And Carlos says how they're a transnational gang responsible for murders in dozens of countries. They discovered they had a snitch. Maybe they killed his handler as payback. And Bridges says how that is an intriguing theory, but well, facts, that is all it is. A theory. And Carlos is like, right, so let's go get some.
Right.
And Carlos thinks like if they solve Julio's murder, there's a chance they're the same people that killed Gabriel. Burgess says which brings him to his second reason he didn't tell Carlos, which is the last time Carlos thought he was going after his dad's killer, you ended up putting a gun upside the head of an undercover agent. And I love Bridges looking at
You didn't
Campbell
hear that.
and saying, you didn't hear that. Literally pointing his finger, you didn't hear that. That was my favorite part of the scene.
Yeah,
Like him
me
doing
too.
that
Yeah.
is so funny.
Mm.
Like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, because Campbell's face is like, what? What now?
He's like,
Right.
I beg your finest pardon.
And then Bridges says how now I can't have you going off like some half-cocked vigilante again. And Carlos like is like, oh, don't take me off this case, and he's like, I'm not foolish enough to even try. And Bridges says like, oh, Campbell will work it with you and like make sure you don't do anything. And apparently, but this case apparently belongs to APD. So that's why he can even give them the case. So there's that. And apparently he's like the detective won't even cough up the damn 911 call. And Carlos is like 911 call? I got you.
Right? He's like, I
Like,
can help with that.
Hey, Wyatt.
yes. Which leads us to our next
Also,
scene.
poor Wyatt. He has had a lot of scarring experiences so far.
Yeah.
He sure has. So yeah, we go to Wyatt, the call center, and this is funny because Carlos calls his cell phone, asks if he's working, and Wyatt's like, yeah, why? And Carlos is like, that's funny because I don't see you. And Wyatt's like, that's because I'm at the break room, and then you just see them walk in, these rangers walk in out.
Right.
Wyatt's like, what the heck? And they're like telling him how they want to listen to the call, and Wyatt says, oh, how APT told his supervisor that anyone wanting to listen to the call is gonna have to put in a request. And Campbell says to Wyatt, it's not like they're conducting an illegal search. And Wyatt gets that, but it's protocol is protocol. Carlos says how, like, to Wyatt, oh, like, I'm guessing this is the first one, and Wyatt's kind of like, what? Carlos is like, the first person you've lost on a call. And Carlos is like, well, Wyatt's kind of like, why, how did you know? And Carlos is like, oh, because the look in your eyes. And Carlos is like, I understand, like, I get it, I know how that feels. And like says how like he can make it right. So they do listen to the call and then they hear something on the call. So like rewinding and listening to it again. And then
Hey.
yeah, Campbell's like, they all think it's just like a hey, and Carlos is like, no, like hey, like apparently that's this guy's street name is Hey, which
Yeah.
honestly I didn't get until I like watched it a second time. I was like, oh, okay.
I'm sorry, the entire time I was watching this again, Moana?
I love the movie,
Moana,
so
is
that was
that
so
you?
funny.
You're
Moana
welcome.
girl, are you here? Oh, I love that.
What?
Think of that. Yeah, and like, so yeah, we find that out, and I loved Carlos comforting Wyatt through the scene too. That was so sweet. Because it's definitely tough having you listen to this again for him,
Right.
like showing him them this. So yeah, that was the scene. Now we go into our next one, the 126. Of course, they're going through this 900-page budget that the city has to find things that they can cut. So they'll find different things, and stuff. And this reminds me of season one when they were helping Mateo study for his test. I
Yep.
definitely got the
Right.
parallel.
Oh my
It was
god,
so
yes.
cool.
Like, whenever you're not working on a kit call, you're looking through this and
That's literally, I was like, oh my God, it's like that. And Mateo is all excited because he's like, they spent $460,000 in Christmas decor. And Owen's like, that's a 64,000. And Mateo's just like, stupid dyslexia. I was like, and
Love
somebody
seeing
just,
that get brought up, honestly. Because
yeah,
I don't feel like they bring up as much. Like, so I love a little reference there.
I do. Yeah, somebody was like saying, oh, I don't think they've really mentioned his dyslexia since like season two. And
yeah.
so, yeah, I do
Mhm.
like it being brought up again. It's like they haven't like it was like a big part of his character in like the first season, maybe season two
Right.
too, but they kind of like
Mhm.
simmered it down, which I do like. Like it made sense for the first season because you're trying to build character. So I liked
Yeah.
the subtle mention of that. And then all of a sudden in the middle of the scene you just see Paul go, Marjan, the frittata, and then she flips it, and my brain goes, that was so seamless. I wonder how many takes it took them to get that.
How many takes? Oh my gosh.
Right.
Because
That's a good point.
you know how hard that is to do that? Like, and it was so seamless in the scene. I'm just like, oh my God, I wonder how long it took.
Yeah.
Just the little things I think out about, and I'm just like, yeah, the scene it was so fun. Like, it was a little adventure.
Right.
It was
Uh,
it was I love watching them get up to shenanigans. It just feels so good.
yes, it really does. So then Carlos and Campbell show up at the detectives, and when the detective was mentioned when they were talking in the briefing, I was like, wait, which detective are we gonna see again?
Mhm.
Because I was like, are
This
they gonna
is
bring? Because I was like, are they gonna bring in Detective Washington? I wasn't sure who we were gonna be seeing again. I was like, that would be hilarious if it's Detective Washington.
God, I love Detective
I
Washington. I
loved
miss
her,
her.
but
Bring
I
her
think that would have been
back.
hilarious. But
That
it's
would have been.
but it's Detective McGregor, who was the one from the stolen kidney ring
Mhm.
episode.
Oh, is that him? I couldn't
Yeah,
figure out where I'd seen him before and if we were supposed to technically know him.
Yeah,
yeah,
I remember seeing it. I was like, when I saw Adam Baldwin's name pop up on the guest star list, I was like, oh, Adam Baldwin, because I know who he is. And then I was like, wait a second. Oh. And then, when we saw him, like, oh, that's right. He played the detective.
I completely
yeah.
forgot who he was until this exact moment. So, you know what? I'm totally on top of this.
Yeah,
But
that's
that makes
okay.
sense. I did think he seemed familiar. I just kind of thought I'd seen him on another show.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
okay. That makes sense actually.
so yeah, so they're like coming to him about the case. They want to tag in on the investigation. He's like, "Oh no, I know how you cowboys roll. You mean you want to take it over unless you have something to add." And Carlos is like, "How about a suspect?" And they narrowed it down to a suspect. Elias, use a street name, Hey Hey. And I love the detective asking how they get access to the 911 call, and Carlos just being like, confidential informant.
Right?
Like
Yeah.
such a flex. And apparently this guy is missing a tooth because he was hit with a frying pan. And the detective tells them that they're waiting on DNA now, and the detective asks them if they would like to take a drive to see if their boy Hey Hey is missing his left incisor. And I'm just like, okay, well, this is interesting.
Detective Mobile go vroom vroom, I guess. Like, let's go.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I do love it. Then Owen shows up again for the mayor, and they're like, he's busy today, and Owen runs into him and says like, and then the mayor's telling Owen it's a done deal. There's a town hall meeting in 4 hours. So I already know in my brain where this is gonna go.
Like, oh,
Um,
good
I
plan.
seen the pictures. I knew and stuff. So yep.
Honestly, go off, Owen.
Yeah,
I'm
I
loving I'm
agree.
loving this might be one of my favorite, like this might be actually one of my favorite episodes of Owen just in general. Seeing him fight so passionately to help Tommy. I loved
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I did like it. And then Wyatt gets a call from somebody reporting there's scary men outside with gun guns guns or whatever. And then Wyatt types in the address, and he is alerted that there's a multi-agency operation in the area, and he needs to tell the caller to basically stay inside, lock your doors, because those are actually police. And I actually liked this because I feel like shows never show like what happens like if somebody were to call 911 and there was like a raid going on.
Yeah.
I like the fact that they like obviously when things go down, they know. So because people are
Yeah.
going to call, but I feel like no
Right.
shows ever show stuff like this. So I
Yeah,
liked
I did
that.
love getting to see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a neat perspective that we don't see very often, and especially
Yeah.
the last couple days I've been watching a lot of SWAT, and they've had
I
a
need to
few
get back on
instances
that.
where people will call and be like, "There's people out here," and then they're like, "Yeah, that's the police."
Yep, that's us. Stay inside, please. Yeah,
Then we go straight to the raid, which I love. I love a good raid. I know
I
I've
love
mentioned
a
that
good raid.
before. Oh, it makes me so excited, like seeing them pull up, and I'm like, ah,
Mhm.
yes, I got love raids, especially
Right.
when Carlos is involved. It's just
Yes, I
great.
love seeing
Like
Carlos
I
in that
love,
wearing the state police stuff instead of the police
Ugh,
Austin PD stuff.
I just love watching him work.
yeah, exactly. Um, so they're saying, there could be five or more people. They're extremely dangerous, and paramedics are standing by. Sam mentions there's always a surprise waiting because they've taken these people or tried to take these people down before. And like Rafa literally killed this scene too, I gotta
Oh, he
say.
was amazing.
Oh my God. He was on top of everything, like this entire episode, but this scene was just so good.
Yes, it was. And so Steve goes into one room and he gets shot, which we knew from the promo. And he got the suspect though, and Carlos looks at the bullet wound and was like, "Oh, you just got grazed." And I love this conversation after because Sam thinks he got 50 of morphine, and Nancy's like, "More than 5 and you would be in a coma." And he's like, "Oh, well, good thing you're in charge." And like TK and Carlos are both there, and like things are a little awkward and tense.
Mhm.
And I love
Oh boy.
Carlos saying to like asking Nancy, "Can I talk to your paramedic?" And Nancy's like, "Sounds like a question for your husband." And Sam's face when he realized that like that was Carlos's husband.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so
That loopy, like, oh.
I know it was funny, and
It was.
they go talk, and Carlos is like checking on TK, which is sweet. And TK's like, "I wasn't the one just in a shootout," and Carlos is like, "Oh, I'm fine." And Carlos says how he doesn't like how they left things. And TK says that Carlos left, and TK says how he won't back down. That's his little brother. And Carlos has a look, and he realizes the attic is like bleeding. Well, he hears this noise and then he's like looking at it and he's like, "Why is the attic bleeding?" So him and the detective they go up there and they do end up finding Nestor Grimes, the missing CI, which I was like, damn. And he was barely alive.
Got
Um,
shot.
and so then we go into like the next part of the scene because the chief meets Sam and Carlos in the hospital waiting room and they tell him how Nestor is still in surgery. Two of the Rolling Nines they picked up already confessed, so they're good for Julio's murder, but they aren't connected to Gabriel's, so the person responsible for him is still out there. Then it happens, Nestor is out of surgery but the doctor isn't sure he might not wake up. And they say that they'd appreciate if they knew if he did wake up. And so then this leads like Sam to ask Carlos like why he didn't or he's like asking like why he didn't just introduce him to his husband to TK and asks like, "Oh, that was him." And Carlos says, "Sorry, we're currently in the middle of a thing." Everyone's always in the middle of a thing, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And Carlos explains how TK wants to adopt his little brother, which is noble. He is 3 and he's sweet. And Carlos, you can tell he's sort of like warming up to the idea, maybe, because he says how he is not ready and he has too much unfinished business. And Campbell says how everyone always says that having kids are the best thing in the world. And Carlos is like, it isn't true. Campbell says, it is. Otherwise, I wouldn't have 4. And Carlos is kind of like, you have 4 kids.
I
Right.
was also like that. I'm like, you have 4?
I, I mean, I was sort
Must be
of,
good for him.
I was like sort of surprised, but also like, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I think I was just as surprised as like when I think he casually dropped having a wife in one of the early
I
episodes, and
know.
I was like,
I was
oh
like, damn.
Yeah.
Not to say he couldn't be multisexual, but I'm just saying I
yeah.
don't think they're gonna go there. We don't have
No.
enough time.
I do love seeing him be like very open and accepting, especially in like such a macho job, being like, you didn't introduce
Right.
me to your husband. Like I do love seeing this.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so Carlos being surprised by that. Um, and Sam was like, "Yeah, you'd be surprised how much you don't know about me." And I'm like,
Hmm.
do tell.
Hmm.
Sam says how kids take every bit of you that's not nailed down. So anything that is left undone will probably stay undone, which is true.
Yeah.
It's true. And I think
I,
that's what Carlos is afraid of.
right. And I obviously we can talk more at the end, but I'm like, is this like a premonition or like a foreshadowing of things to come?
I think it might be because I sort of at this point I'm starting to get different theories too. And I'm starting to get like different thoughts about Carlos and you can kind of tell his feelings in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I am excited to talk about when we get further, even
Yeah.
further than this into the episode. I want to talk too soon.
All right.
I was nursing a hunch this entire episode, and I will say that still nursing it. It's just evolved, so I'm interested to talk about it. This
Yep.
is a very interesting scene.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It is good. It's always good also getting an outside perspective or
Right.
talking with to people about things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then so the 126 end up walking into a town hall meeting, which I love. And Owen's like, I
Go off.
object. I
I
object. And,
object.
and the mayor's like, this is not a wedding or a legal proceeding. Like, you can't just object. And they tell him that they won't be leaving until they make things right for Tommy. And Owen says how his team has been crunching the numbers as well. And they say everything that could help to cut it down. And
Mm-hmm.
like they make really good points. And I'm just like, it is baffling when you think of things that companies do. Or not even just like things they waste money on. I'm just like, damn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
it is.
yeah,
It's interesting.
Yeah.
yeah. And so they like say their thing. And then the mayor is just like, because they won't leave. So he's like, well, we're just gonna have the cops come in and arrest them. And for interrupting a legal proceeding or whatever.
Yeah.
And Owen being like, respectfully, Mayor, you could kiss my ass. It's very Owen.
It is very Owen.
Oh my gosh,
And
yes.
I mean, I don't blame him because I think I just I love it. Like just
Again, I love watching politicians get their ass handed to them.
Right.
I know
And this
because it
was
doesn't
so
happen very
deeply
much.
satisfying.
It doesn't
Does
happen
not.
very much in the real world, so I love seeing it on TV because at least we can fantasize about something.
Right.
Mhm. Yes,
Because
we
I
could.
would love to do that in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So then we see Tommy at home, and then the girls run in and are like, because Marjan was on Instagram Live, which I think is what really set off that mayor because she was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm live streaming this to my
Five
however
point
many million
something million
followers.
followers.
5.2 million followers, something along those lines. And I'm like, go off. Honestly, I love when she uses it for good.
Yeah, for sure. And so then the girls come in, show Tommy this because of course, Marjan's on live, so of course they see it. Everyone sees it. And Tommy's just like, oh no. She already knows. And so they're all taking a stand for Tommy. And then, so the sergeant comes in and introduces himself to Owen. He's like, with your permission, I would like my team would love to take a stand in solidarity with you for Tommy. And I was like, huh, even the cops aren't for the mayor.
Right.
That
Yep.
was like,
That was awesome. Because you got like what 60
I loved it.
cops walking in, and like everyone else thinks they're gonna like, oh, they're here to arrest the team, and then like, yeah, we'd like to stand in solidarity with you. I was like, yeah,
I was like, oh my God, I love it.
yeah, that was amazing. And I was wondering in the pictures why we saw cops there. I'm like, I knew it was about healthcare, but I was like, oh, so is it just like for everybody? And I didn't really understand like we didn't know like the context
yeah,
exactly. And so it's just like, well, their plan didn't work to just like throw them out
Mhm.
and stuff. So like the mayor's side is like talking and they're talking and like
Mhm.
they're all having their own conversations. They're like trying to like it's so entertaining. And then so then it comes out that they're creating a special fund for Tommy. But then Tommy comes in yelling, "No deal, no deal." And the mayor was like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "I'm Tommy Vega."
Right.
Like, and she's like, "I can't accept this until comprehensive treatment is available for every single first responder in the city." And the mayor, like, um, he does like agree to that, which
Yeah,
is
because
good.
part of his campaign was that he was a supportive of the first responders.
Mhm.
So this, yeah,
Amusing.
and I love
When watching it come down to it.
I loved when they even were pointing things out, like Nancy pointing out, like you printed like how many copies of a 900-page report to give to all these people here?
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they have emails? Like,
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
they all have laptops.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, it's the college I went to is like a very like green campus, like to the point that like yes, we have printed things, but like a lot of like teachers didn't give you hard copies of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you wanted a hard
Yeah.
copy, you could go print it yourself.
Right.
They weren't necessarily going to give you like certain things like syllabuses we never got, hardly ever got a hard copy of. And like even like I love paperless things. Like I haven't even like I don't get like bills in the mail. I'm like, please just send me something paperless.
Right.
Yeah. I
I
Like
haven't
agree.
even-
My college was also pretty green. I did get some things printed out, but not a fair amount of stuff was just accessible online.
Yeah.
And also we
yeah.
weren't turning in paper, like we weren't writing actual papers either. We were just writing them on Word.
Mhm.
So and hey, it works.
Yep.
Yeah, it does. Um and then so then we go back to the hospital and Carlos, Sam and the chief are there and then Nestor does wake up, but the doctor doesn't think he has much time left and apparently he's asking for Gabriel, like that's the only person he'll talk to. So Carlos goes in there and Carlos has to tell him that Gabriel is dead. Um, but he's his son, Carlos, and Nestor doesn't believe him at first. So Carlos has to show him like some form of ID for
Mhm.
him to actually believe him.
Right.
And then
Mhm.
Nestor's like, "Oh, I see it now. Like I see it with your eyes." And he's like, "Oh yeah, Gabriel talked about you. He was proud of you." Um, and he was saying how like Gabriel was a cop, but he was also my friend. And Carlos said how oh yeah, he was mine too. And then Carlos tells him that like that he believes what happened to Nestor could have happened to Gabriel. And you can see that Nestor has this look, and Carlos is like asking if he agrees. And he's like, "Oh, you agree?" And like he's like obviously like he doesn't have much time left from what it looks like, so he's like
Mhm.
trying to like just stay with me. Nestor is trying to say something, but like he can't. He's like having obviously like he's having trouble saying it. He's like saying like the five and like Carlos is like, what's the five? And Nestor's like saying five CIs from Rangers cases all got burned. And Carlos is like, someone sold them out, a ranger. And Nestor says he he told me to be careful, and he was worried that Gabriel that he might be next, and he was right. And Carlos asks if he told Nestor like anybody to watch out for, and then he's crashing. Carlos is calling for a nurse, then there's a code blue. And he goes out there, and we don't think he heard anything. And then
Right.
the chief and Sam are asking about it, and Carlos is having obviously like flashbacks of this moment, and he's telling them Nestor is dead. And they're like, "Oh, did he say anything?" And then Nestor's last word is Ranger Campbell
Yeah, we get a
as
little
his
flash.
last word.
Really good. I was like, he's gonna tell him something, and they're not gonna tell us right now. And sure enough.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that sets up something whether it's true or not. And that's how the episode ends, which I know a lot of people are saying this online, and I definitely agree with this, that like so Campbell's like the red herring because
He is.
well, it's kind of obvious this is just how TV works because they're not gonna tell us who it actually is because that would give it away. So like he probably thinks it's Campbell, but it's definitely he's on the right track because it's definitely a ranger. It's definitely
Mhm.
somebody on the inside. And he Carlos is going to think it's Campbell and but um it's gonna be somebody
Mm.
else. And I've seen like a lot of people say this online. A lot of reporters have been saying this, and I'm just like, well, obviously, this is how TV shows work. You know, when you're
Mhm.
in 10 minutes of a Law and Order episode that like the first 20 minutes they're like, oh, it's this person. And you know that's not going to be the person who did it. And then when you get like 45 minutes or 35 minutes of the show, that's when you're like, oh, they did. That's how TV works. That's how stories work.
I will say, like, I guess we are to this point because it is the end of the episode. I
Yeah.
was nursing a hunch this entire episode, and I will say I'm even more sure of it now. It's for damn sure Bridges.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think we
Damn sure.
talked about this in the beginning of the season and we were like,
Yeah.
okay, if it's somebody, I feel like it has to be him. And
Yep.
it's gonna be so good because
Mm.
Carlos is gonna go to the wrong person about all this info.
Yep.
See, here's the thing. I'm not 100% convinced Campbell isn't involved. I'm wondering if maybe he is unknowingly helping Bridges, or maybe is but doesn't know the full scope, or maybe he is helping Bridges, but he is absolutely not the person in charge. I like Campbell. I don't want him to ultimately be the bad guy. I am still
Yeah.
remaining open to the possibility. It was interesting because I think we were all, I think, a little suspicious of him very early on. But like the moment they said it was him, I was like, it's absolutely not, or it's not him
Yeah.
in charge. So no,
Oh.
it's absolutely Bridges because he's the only other one that they featured as well. Like they're setting it up to be someone super major,
Mm-hmm.
and that he's the only other person. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm interested to see how Campbell does ultimately fit into this
Right.
Yeah. I
because of a couple things, but he's absolutely
yeah.
got it.
Yeah. Also, I do know that if there was a spinoff, they want it to focus, like they want Campbell to be in it. So
I heard something about that.
yeah, I know that they wanted to I don't know all the details, but I do know that they sort of wanted to focus on like Carlos and Campbell in a
Hmm.
sense. So they're not gonna make him like the killer if they want like a future. And these episodes have been doing so good.
Yeah.
So like these are the episodes to look out for, and they've been number one on Hulu. Like we are thriving. They have really good ratings. They have really good like reviews. Like these are like the episodes that are like heavily Carlos have just really like done really well.
Rafa is acting his heart out in this. Like
Yeah.
I will give this to him. Like someone please give this man like a star role in some major show. Like he is like other than just this, obviously Lone Star is ending. We're still not fully confirmed any details on the spin-off really. Like we still are they're still being very tight about it. So I don't I don't know. But God, he's really working it. Also, alternative theory is that Campbell isn't involved, but he suspects it's Bridges, or he suspects there is something fishy going on.
Oh yeah, he could. I don't know. I have so many thoughts. Like maybe he was suspicious about certain things and he was leading his own investigation too. I
Yeah.
don't know. There's so many things that could be going down with this, but I feel like we're at a good point. I was never worried about them closing out this storyline. I knew they would do it. But I was just
Mhm.
where we've been waiting for the past 8 episodes to like get to a point where we sort of are like, okay, the storyline's actually moving. And this is the episode where I'm like, okay, we're actually like moving a bit.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I feel like you're right. I feel like him saying Campbell was definitely not him. I mean, obviously, we've also had it. Well, at the beginning, we kind of wondered if Campbell was part of this. And I think he fully does like have something in it. And what I was thinking is, what if Bridges is actually trying to frame Campbell on this?
That's
Oh,
what I'm thinking.
I could see that too.
That's another thing I'm thinking now. Also, he Nestor was dying when he said Ranger Campbell. He might have been trying to say to talk to Campbell.
Oh he
Maybe
might not have been
Campbell
able
knows
to
something.
finish his thought when he was passing. So
Now I
yeah,
know it was in the context of Carlos being like, "Is there anyone to watch out for?" Like, what that kind of thing. But I'm thinking that they could also be playing that as well. Like, he wasn't able to finish what he was
yeah.
saying.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the thing is like obviously they're not going to tell us who did it in the eighth episode when we have 12 episodes, you know. So I feel like we definitely have a lot more to go, but I think it's definitely giving Carlos a pause to realize that there's a ranger that's crooked, and
Yeah.
his dad. He's realizing that his dad rubbed somebody the wrong way, and that somebody was in bed with the Nines, which I think we've kind of established that it sounds like this gang may be part of why Gabriel died.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the direction they need to go now. So now Carlos is going to have to be even more vigilant with everything he's doing and every investigation and every call he goes out on, because he doesn't really know if Sam's got his back, if Bridges has his back, but of course because the CI just told him Campbell, he's gonna initially think, oh yeah, Campbell's the one I can't trust.
I'm just really hoping he keeps it close to his chest. I'm really hoping he doesn't go talk to Bridges, but also this is how
Oh.
this kind of episode goes.
Well, they were both standing there when he asked, did he say anything? He goes, no, he didn't.
But
Yeah.
and they kind
True.
of
But
get into this in the promo, so
Do we have any fan thoughts?
yeah, I don't know. I wasn't like, there are other things for the episode. I
yeah.
don't know. I will say, just like final thoughts on the episode.
Mhm.
I really liked this episode. There were things I did not like about it, like the whole Jonah thing.
Yeah.
But and my thought when watching this episode was like, okay, we don't need like another emergency spinoff. We need like a Carlos spinoff.
Mm.
Because if it was anything like this, it would be so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think it would do good with Carlos, and obviously TK would be there as well. So they'd be taking one of their most successful parts of Lone Star and being able to make show of it. Now, of course, I'd love that if they just kept Lone Star, but that's not what's happening.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm interested to see what's going to happen here. Like, I'm not against another emergency spinoff, like completely separate from all of this.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm going to give anything a shot at this point.
Well, Jared Padalecki's Walker Texas Ranger series just ended too, so they may be trying to do a spinoff and try and do the Ranger thing now that Walker is done, because Walker was the original one from the late '80s and early '90s with Chuck Norris, and then CW rebooted it with Jared Padalecki after he finished in Supernatural. So with that show being canceled,
CW booted it with Jared Padalecki. I was saying CW was the Supernatural network too, so of course
yeah
for that.
Yeah, that
which
kind of
is why they did
happens.
that one. But anyway, so saying, I was like, well, maybe they are trying to do a Ranger spinoff now that Walker's done, and but I have other thoughts we can talk about. I had a really good thought, and I might actually share it at the end. I don't want to hold on to it after we do the promo talk. So
Oh yeah, I will have more thoughts on for sure. I guess I'll get into the fan
sure.
bond. There's some great ones. Loved it. Have been waiting for a Carlos centered episode, and Rocco delivered as always, of course.
100% and more.
Oh my God. So good and so shocking.
Yeah.
Loved it. Best episode of season 5. Carlos tension galore. I understand both sides, but need Carlos to be serious, and I'm like, I don't like that.
Well, sorry, I did catch last bit.
I understand both sides, but Carlos needs to be serious.
Mm,
I don't agree with that.
I think he is being serious. Like, I think he's being extremely serious.
Yeah, that's yeah. I think he's being like very serious about it. I mean, I understand both sides, and I don't put fault in any side of their what's going on.
I actually, you know what? I put equal fault in both of them because for communication, they're both struggling with communicating. They're both struggling with prioritizing. I will put fault in them. They are not at fault for their different feelings on it, though. I just need them to actually listen to each other.
Right.
I'm hoping we get a fair amount of that next episode. I'm assuming we do, but like, yeah, I don't. That was maybe obviously we're leaving this on a cliffhanger in multiple ways in this episode, but I don't love that we kind of left on an off note with TK and Carlos.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a weird feeling. But yeah, no, I think I think they're both being serious. They just have differing opinions.
Yeah,
Right.
it's tough, but yeah, that's just my thought on that. I guess we'll
Yeah.
get into the promo now. So the
Mhm.
episode is in 2 weeks, and this will be like the fall finale, and then I believe the episodes start back up on around the 20th of January, and then the finale is like early February because we'll only have like 3 more episodes, which I'm just like I'm
I'm
still
really
like
sad.
in denial of the fact that it's the final three. Like I've been in denial about it for a while, but I'm
Yeah.
especially like in denial. Like I'm just not thinking about it per
Right.
honestly, I just can't think about this. But we're already setting stuff up because Owen is in some meeting and with the NYFD, I guess, and they want him to become the next fire chief of New York City, and I'm just like, what the heck? What the heck? But I'm also like, this doesn't surprise me at all.
No,
See,
It's a good way to end out this show.
I agree.
yeah, I have so many theories on
Me
that.
too.
I honestly thought that this would happen for Texas and not New York, to be honest. But honestly,
Mm.
seeing this scene or this part of the promo, I'm like, I see it. Um,
See, if they were going to do that for Texas, I would need him and Billy endlessly arguing. That's the thing. I would need them arguing, especially since Billy would be passed up in that instance. I would need the banter. Uh,
and then Carlos is showing, I believe, the chief a file and a picture and some other things saying, my father figured out it was him and said Campbell killed him for it or something like that. And Chief Bridges says they're looking at the most cold-blooded killer he's ever seen, and they're somewhere and they're getting shot at, and then Bridges tells Carlos to shoot. Owen is saying it's something he has to do, and Judd says it's his destiny and stuff. And so then we see Tommy. It's kind of like a glimpse, and Nancy, she's getting Tommy's getting a treatment. We see a glimpse of TK, and then we see Carlos, and this is how the promo ends because he gets shot, and that's how we end it. Which I've been waiting for this scene since the season started because
mm,
I had seen
Mhm.
this, like a picture of this, or maybe a minor clip in like the season promo. So I've been waiting all season to figure out when this is gonna happen, and I'm just like the angst.
Yeah.
I
That'll
have
probably,
so many thoughts on what's happening.
yeah. I know you really perked up when you heard that
Mhm.
about Owen. So my kind of thought was that, okay, so this is how they're going to end the series. They're going to adopt Jonah, but because everything he had was in New York, TK and Carlos, who have just resolved the Owen case or Gabriel case, however that resolves, is going to end up deciding to leave the police force, and they're going to head back to New York, and Owen, Jonah, TK, and Carlos will head back to New York, or Carlos will go to New York with them. And I feel that
Yeah,
that's how the series will end. And it'll bring it full circle because they were leaving New York in the beginning. That's one of my
yeah.
thoughts.
I'm
I
still
mean, and also,
50-50 on it. I'm
Yeah,
not
me too.
sure how what I think will happen. There's been so many theories have been floating around the last couple of weeks. Like some people are like maybe not Owen will go back to New York, but TK and Carlos will stay here and then Owen will let them live in his house. But I'm also like, guys, you do know Mateo still lives there, right?
true.
So that
And
theory is not very good.
also, sorry, the dog just joined me. So I don't know. I have mixed thoughts on this. I don't know. I don't I would like to see Owen go back to New York. I think that'd do well. I do think that is where he's ultimately destined to end up. I will also say I don't see Carlos leaving his mom.
Yeah, or his
So
family.
yeah, like his family's down here. We know he's family oriented. And honestly, I don't think going back to New York would be great for TK either.
No.
Um, so I don't know. I don't want them necessarily to go back to New York. If that's the way the cookie crumbles, that's how it goes. But like, I don't know. I am interested to see though, because naturally, if Owen goes back, next in line we're gonna have Paul for captain of the 126. And I'm like, hey, I'm about that. I'm interested to see how this goes. I don't know, a lot of unanswered questions. Especially
Mhm.
if there is something to the whole Carlos and Campbell in um
Yeah.
spin-off, like a lot of unanswered questions. I'm very interested to see. I perked up because I'm just thinking about all the different ways that like this showdown is gonna go. I'm like, okay, so is Campbell an accessory with Bridges, and Bridges is setting him up and trying to get him killed before he can rat out Bridges? That's what it seems like it could be to me. Or Campbell is not involved, but he knows he's being gone after.
Mm,
And same kind of things happening, so that I can't talk. Or, I'm like, I definitely think Bridges is trying to take Campbell out before he can
yeah.
do anything, regardless of whether or not they're actually working together. And so I'm like, okay, Carlos is getting shot. Angsty, but I'm here for it. Like,
Yeah.
please tell me he and TK like make
Uh,
up before this, or we're gonna have like another bedside like heart to heart, but this time Carlos is in the hospital bed instead of TK. I don't know. I'm really excited for next
yeah.
episode though. Can't
Yeah.
believe it's gonna be the fall finale.
Yeah.
I know. Oh my God, it's crazy.
We're getting down to the wire, you guys. So
I
I
know.
don't.
It's crazy. It's crazy to think. I mean, I remember when we were so excited when Lone Star was coming back, and it's like, wow, it's 12 episodes of like we've already watched 8 episodes, and we only got like this fall finale, which is 9, and then we got 10, 11, and 12. I'm like, wow, we don't have that many left.
I know I have never watched a show from beginning to end before. I always come in
Really?
after the fact. Yeah. Also I grew up on like 70s shows that
Mhm.
were out before I was born. So like I've not really grown with the show before. So it's definitely gonna be a little hard to watch it come to an end. But I am just gonna say like they have knocked season 5 out of the park so far. And I know they're gonna knock out the ending of it as well. And I'm just so excited both for next episode and for the end of the season. I think I say that like most of our podcast episodes. I'm just so excited, but I am. Like
Mhm.
this is
Yeah, it's a
so
true feeling.
yeah.
Yes, I guess. Okay, so I don't like have concrete theories, but this is how I think they're gonna like, I don't know, do things. Not necessarily like what's gonna happen, but just so I have a feeling that like at the end of the next episode, they are going to whatever happens with like the murder, finding out Gabriel's murder, they're definitely gonna like have that be like a cliffhanger
Yeah.
for 10, and then when we come back with 10 being um like the winner premiere, that I feel like it's gonna unfold in 10 just because like I I know there's gonna be an emergency for like the finale, but I don't know if that's gonna also involve 11, so I feel like they're gonna probably have that wrapped up by 10, or at least have most
Mm.
of it out there.
Yeah.
Especially since they're gonna have to wrap up other things. So I definitely think
Mhm.
these next two episodes are definitely gonna like give us everything that we need from this and wrap up that. And I don't know, I'm interested to see like what happens, especially in 9.
Mm.
Uh, I can't
Yeah.
wait.
I
I
definitely
want to
feel
see
like
what
there's a
happens with
cliffhanger.
Carlos too, like
Yeah,
him
me
getting
too.
shot. Like, uh, like I have so many feelings about it. Like, um, knew it was coming, had been waiting for it, and also like I know we really haven't seen him get hurt that much. Last time was last season. And it really wasn't like it was bad, but not that bad. Like, but I think a lot of people are like think like theorizing what's gonna happen. Somebody's like, wait, what if Campbell calls TK and tells him about it? Or like somebody's like, oh, but he might be there. And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm just like, I need like a total freak out. I need like somebody's like, just imagine like him trying to give Carlos like CPR or something and then like them like pushing him away. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, I cannot wait. This is
Yeah.
oh
Yeah, it's gonna be a crazy couple of episodes, but I do like the idea of them doing a cliffhanger on 9 to go into 10 and then 10 wrapping up the Gabriel storyline. So then 11 and 12, because I think I had heard that the possibility of the disaster was gonna be towards the end of like 11, 12-ish. So maybe that would wrap up some stuff. Yeah, I'm interested to see which direction they're going to take it. I know that they're all saying that like by the end of the season, everybody's going to be in a happy place. We
what's
don't.
happy.
I know, right? Like, what do they want to consider happy?
Yeah, I will say,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm definitely interested to see how they do the finale. I definitely think like, well, I don't know. I've seen shows like in the same scenario wrap up. So I'm like interested to see if they like give us like time in the future and then we see where everyone's at. I'm excited for like I can wait, but I'm excited for that. Not that it'll
Right.
really change anything, but I don't want it to end.
It's gonna be weird because for me, Grace, I'm kind of with you. There's it's not very often I watch finales of shows, and even like I back and forth with Supernatural. I watched it and then I stopped watching it, and I went back to watching it, and then I watched it again for a while, and then I stopped. And so I remember when the finale happened. I remember watching it only, and I hadn't seen like the last few episodes. So it's like it's weird. Like we're gonna actually watch through the finale. So
I
because
know.
the
Yeah.
joke is like, it's not over if we don't watch the finale.
Oh, oh my
Well,
God,
I
I've
was
seen those.
yeah, I was also partially referring to like I've not been actively watching a show for the entire duration it's been on. So like again, that's more why I meant like with the 70s shows and older ones like even Supernatural. I have not gotten past the eighth season on that one yet. I had issues with the first episode of the eighth season and didn't continue watching. So I need to
I have to
rewatch. But
see which one of those. It's been a while. I think I finally, when I went did my rewatch, I got through season 10 and then I had stopped again. So I think 10 is as far as I've gotten.
yeah, but Lone Star will be, I think it's gotta be the first one that I've watched from about when it started airing, not quite on, but about when it started airing to now it's ending.
Yeah.
And 911, whenever it does eventually end, hopefully not for a while, will also be another one because I've watched that from the get-go as well. So,
Mhm.
oh no, it's like the child's going off to college. I don't want to let it go.
No, I think we're all gonna be a mess when we film that or record that episode. Like guys,
Yeah.
I definitely want to do like a sentimental episode like after the finale too when we get there.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't I'm not gonna go there.
No,
Not
yeah.
Yeah.
today. Not
Not
now.
yet.
Not today. We
Got
can deal with that
time.
later.
Yeah.
Oh,
Another great episode opening
that's
up a
good.
lot of stuff.
I will. Hmm?
I was just saying, opening up a lot of stuff, but digging in because we all wanted I personally did not want a quick resolution to Gabriel's death. I wanted it to be like a ongoing investigation, and I'm glad they did that.
Yeah.
I am loving the angst.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna need a lot of like comfort material, please, after the angst. I am living for the angst. Um, I will say, I was a little mixed on my feelings about the episode after initially watching it. I think that talking through it in the podcast, though, has like solidified that I really do love this episode. I think I was just a little mixed because of a couple things, but now I'm just like, I love this episode. I'm really curious to see how it goes, but that's the nice thing about watching it right before coming to talk to you guys. I get to figure out my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like therapy.
Right.
Yeah, it's like therapy.
Thank you guys so much for joining us and listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And also be sure to check out our website, 911lsroundup.com. You guys can also follow the podcast on our socials at 91LS Roundup on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. As always, be sure to join our Discord server. The link is in the description of this podcast and also on our website. You guys can follow me, Katie F. Love Charles, on Instagram and TikTok and Threads.
You guys can follow me, Grace, at RonanRathman911 on Instagram and at CheapGirl31 on Twitter. But stay tuned because I will be revamping my socials at some point soon.
Very fun.
Sounds good. So you can find me, EJ, at EJ8302 on Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, and pretty much everywhere. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.